Last week, I opened by, of course, referring to the principles that apply to this trial. Apply to this effort, a solemn one, by you as peers and citizens of Kevin Ellis. And that's because these principles are what I asked you to have live in your minds as you took in this case, to assess the burdens, the proof, not the argument, the responsibilities on the government, so that you know you got it right. I would never, in all my years doing this, ever call a case simple. Very simple. In fact, with respect to the lawyers for the government here, they're really intelligent. They're really good at arguing. They're really good at piecing together what they were brought to argue. And unfortunately, the less investigation that's done, the easier it is for them. Though we've already heard in this trial reference to alternative theory. Respectfully, and I do mean it with respect, I submit that it's not the job to fill up the box till they got you to make it think it happened. If you think this happened, you have to acquit. That's what these principles say. It has to be proven, and there has to be nothing outside the box. It's a real possibility. That's what the principle is. Not till we have convinced you to feel good about a verdict. It's when we have proven to you that there's nothing outside the box. That's a real possibility. That's the paradigm, at least I ask, and I submit these principles mean to your extraordinarily solemn and important role and duty. In all these years, I've heard all sorts of people say, how can it be that jurors can render a verdict without thinking about the matter? You're instructed by the judge. You can't use passion or prejudice or emotion in this process. That's hard. My colleagues have said it's impossible. I don't agree. They said it's hard for them to put jurors to put those things aside and follow the principles. I don't agree. I stand here absolutely confident that you can do it and will do it. I'm not going to play evidence. I don't think I'm going to show evidence. I'd like to have a conversation with you. A conversation about real possibilities. A conversation about evidence and proof versus what wasn't done. Issues about what this happened in this trial compared to what those principles that you have to make your decision based on means. I said at the start, and this is the case, you've got the instructions there. I'm certainly not going to read any of them. You got them. This issue in this case is about what Kevin did. What Kevin thought. What Kevin did in terms of those thoughts. What are the real possibilities in relation to all of that? Right? Because the proof beyond a reasonable doubt has to be that he knew and he agreed. There can't be any real possibility outside that box. And the proof beyond a reasonable doubt has to be that he did not have a reasonable fear at the time he fired. Not, as Mr. Bertram said, after he fired. Or what the real possibility is of what he realized what his mother had done. I think, and returning to the theme of investigating the burden of proof, the importance of trying, the importance of looking, proving away an alternative theory. At the time he fired, the question is, in his mind, have they disproven what their own witness said existed? Talking a bit about what it seems to me, at least, and I'm in an argument. Mr. Watanabe is exactly correct. It's the evidence as you see it. It's the evidence as you'll have it. I'll talk in a minute what I think about the fact that you try to prove a case on a stack of cherry-picked texts and call logs and search histories, none of which happen to be Kevin's, almost. This is what their star witness, Kate, the murderer, said she admitted the atmosphere she had created in her family was. Her family includes Kevin. Not just on everything she typed, they had conversations, got a call log. Wonder what was said in the 30-minute call. I'll address it in a minute, but I have an idea about what you might do if you're sworn as a peace officer. And I mean no disrespect to Mr. Detective Nordine. No personal disrespect. It's not about him personally. This is about the law. This is about the constitutional principles. And by the way, the government can ask him to do more at any minute. Or maybe their hired gun they could ask to do something, since they're not involving him with Detective Nordine. But please don't interpret my criticisms of the responsibilities of burden of proof to be personal criticism of Detective Nordine, who's wrapped in, I guess, when they want and left out when they talk to their expert. But what you could do if you want to know what a call meant or a text meant, etc., you could do something. You could ask. You want to know what was meant by these texts? You ask them. Ask people soon. Now, you can't ask everybody. Certainly, you can't ask Kate and Tracy after 3.5 months and they're arrested after that time. You're probably not going to get answers about their texts, but those have people on the other side. But Kate, their witness, who it was well established, cannot be on that stand with her plea deal of 10 years for what she did. Unless they agree she told them the truth and all the truth and nothing but the truth and everything leading up to this trial. You saw that. That is their precondition. You have to talk to us. You have to interview with us. You have to write letters to the judge. And all that has to be true or you don't get your deal. And she said, yeah, I'm the mechanic. I am the means by which I got my husband killed. And I told you it would be just chilling how she did it, and I submit it was. With absolute no evidence suggesting and plenty inferences to be made that Kevin had no idea she was making those calls, no idea she was sending those grotesque texts, and no idea of her luring plan. There is nothing. As a matter of fact, she says he didn't know. Matter of fact, she says he wasn't around. The witness, they said, had to be believed in order to get her deal. And that atmosphere was, he raped me, I was a victim of domestic abuse. I was terrified. The minute I left California, I was terrified. He has guns. The word kidnapping was thrown around. As a matter of fact, purposely texted to Kevin about kidnappings. The words. This is the milieu. This is the atmosphere that Kate admitted she built in her family. And Kate admitted it was done to make everybody on edge. And Kate admitted that she then did the opposite of it, lured him in with no one knowing, and got him killed. And it's clear that atmosphere doesn't need to only come from Kate. I mean, the idea that pieces of your text messaging about all this from sisters, from a family that Kate said, it has to be believed to get her deal. They had nothing to do. Of course they had nothing to do with it. Of course they wouldn't do it. Of course these people wouldn't be part of my plan. Of course they didn't. I guess we'll talk about it in a minute, but you saw it. Certainly the state wants to scare those sisters and make them think that they're in trouble. Even today. I want to talk about imperfect self-defense real quick, because you heard the jury instructions, and I want to make it clear that if Kevin was wrong, and that's the interesting thing about the knife, right? We didn't need the experts to concede it. I conceded it. Not because of shots in the arm, not because of them being wrong about whether he's left-handed. Because there's no way Cormac came in there with a knife. Because there's no way, based on what Kate was doing to him with the mastermind mom, that he would think he needed a knife. Whatever was done, if Kevin wasn't informed, if Kevin was used in this by the mastermind mechanic or architect and the mechanic Kate, as Kate says was happening, and it turns out there wasn't a knife, there wasn't a gun. He was wrong when he believed whatever happened. We'll talk about the timeline in a second, but there is no version of this timeline where there's not at least 30, 60, or maybe even 90 seconds of happenings in that house. And two experts agreed you can't tell from the crime scene out where everybody moved and how much they moved. And then I just heard the prosecutor say what Tracy would say you can believe. If it had been the truth, she would have said it. So we know that, I guess the state believes it was the truth, when Tracy described to the neighbor Laney, that none of us knew was coming out until this trial, that Matt came in, moved around, came to the right, Kevin went to somewhere she didn't see, and then she saw the shots. Sounds like the state's position, you should believe that part of Tracy's statements to the Mrs. Laney. If Kevin is wrong, and you find that beyond a reasonable doubt, and that he didn't have the belief that there was imminent threat to others or himself when he fired the weapon, because he wasn't in fact at risk and no one else was in fact. I submit that they have not disproven that, but it's important to know that imperfect self-defense is still a crime. If you find that, he's guilty of a crime. This conspiracy just doesn't make sense. I won't go through it all. But here's a guy supposed to be in a conspiracy, supposed to be pre-planned. Supposed to know that they have a plan. Now, if you've got a conspiracy and a plan, you're doing your best to make sure it will work, you're probably going to screw up. No one gets all their plans right when they execute them. But the plan person has a plan. The evidence is unequivocal that Kevin left cocaine out all over his room, although they didn't take any pictures of it. We luckily caught it from a body cam. When he knew he was going to be, that the house was going to be searched and everything, he left evidence of a foul. That the timeline, that you need time, as the expert, Patrick Serpoli, concluded, was time so that they could conspire. That was their expert's conclusion. That delay, and Tracy did get caught. She didn't get as much delay as she wanted because of the Laney call. That's why she had to just finally tell Kevin, who she hadn't had time to fully brief. Just don't say anything. She controlled the narrative. She told him not to say anything. She sent the lawyer to Kevin's room. She didn't get the briefing completed. It doesn't take 6 minutes to put a knife in somebody's hand. And the medical examiner says probably about a minute before Matt would die. Maybe a little longer, but right around there. The reality is that you don't need any time. You want to make it look for reals. You have the plan, you do the deed, you call the 911 so you don't look suspicious. And you certainly don't leave the blanket up anymore. Not that you put on the couch. You certainly don't do the things that are going to look like it might be a crime. Kevin certainly doesn't leave cocaine all over. He doesn't come down. Doesn't wear a holster. You don't need a holster if you already know what you're going to do. We had an officer agree you have a holster to have a gun in case you need it. Scene. We have like two experts, theirs and Mr. Bertram, who have to concede you do take the scene, take everything we know and try to use as evidence in courts of law to meet the burden of proof, to try to get the evidence out of it. And what we don't know, both of them, don't really know exactly what the bodies did in there between Matt coming in and being shot. You can't tell from the scene. There's time, there could be body movement, the two people could move about, they could meet for the first time at the corner of that hallway with Kevin in front of the fireplace, which does appear to be the unanimous conclusion of people who tried to look at the scene. We, however, do know, again, up in the upper left, Kevin leaves cocaine on his bedside stand. Doesn't look like a pretty cleaned up stage with his phone. With his phone. Clearly if he saw and read that warrant text, which also confused them all because it turned out not to be accurate, because Matt came about 10 minutes sooner than you would have thought. Surprising. There's Kevin's laptop. It's over by the lamp. All the lights weren't off. There's the lamp on. The front porch light is on. You can see that clearly from the evidence. And there's a stool pulled out where Kevin's laptop, apparently no one wanted. We had to go through packaging and evidence chain of custody to finally get an admission that that's Kevin's. Tracy should be believed if she told it, saying they're in the kitchen, saying that Matt went around in front of the fireplace, used that Pharaoh to the extent you think it's helpful, but it's pretty interesting and pretty neat to have a 3D ability to walk through that scene and kind of be there. There's a real possibility. It's not a real possibility by my argument. It's a real possibility by the evidence that the body's moved around and something happened. By the way, from everything we know, it's of course a real inference that it's a real possibility that Tracy's doing something to make Kevin think he's gonna be harmed. He's got a gun. He wants to fool. And what is the best explanation for Tracy succeeding in her plan that nobody is disagreeing? It's the two peas in the pod. Tracy and Kate, evidence that they ended up collecting, is convincing that there are two peas in a pod executing their plan to have Matt die. Is to whip up Kevin, and where do you think cocaine came from? Get him to the point of fear and everything else. And frankly, maybe at the end of the day, if it didn't work, as Kate said, Tracy would do it. It's going to be easier with Kevin if he doesn't know. He's a good person. It sounds like nobody's disagreeing with that. We heard all about it. We just heard Mr. Watabe talk about the evidence about Kevin. Took him to sushi, told him he's going to murder somebody, and he was unchanged and came happily back to the house. This cleanup stuff, let's pay attention to the unrefuted evidence that Kevin wasn't part of it, that Kevin was up in his room. He was up there most of the day sleeping it off. He got to go to sushi, which you can see from the text has happened a million times. And then he's not around, according to Kate herself, when things were changed. Look at the bottom right. You've got these photos in much better than I'm going to be able to do here, where he would have been. That's a pretty lame way to make sure no blood gets on a couch. But as you will see in the other picture that you were given that was sent to the house on a different day, that's the way the blankets are in the other picture that is sent by Rachel. It's a blanket on a couch. Why would Kevin know or wonder that there's no toys? His mom's fastidious cleaner. With the door shut, you have no idea that there's not a screen on it. From the inside, you don't know that there's not a screen on that door. And Kate flat says it's unrefuted in this evidence that Kevin wasn't around, wasn't there for it, wasn't part of the scene. That's the scene that's supposed to tell Kevin things are getting ready for a killing. We planned it. And then let's clear up the other stuff you want to do if you want to prove something guilt beyond a reasonable doubt from a crime scene. You heard the DNA people. Don't know if you understood it. Maybe someday you can explain it to me. But one line that I read out of that final point, Kevin Ellis and Matt Restelli cannot be included or excluded as possible contributors to the YST or the male-related DNA evidence. And then, of course, it wouldn't have probably mattered anyway, because I fully expect that on a carpet in that house, Kevin's DNA is everywhere. By the crime scene, however, it seems like all experts and police agree that Kevin's by that fireplace, seeing that's his perspective. There's a hole in that door. No shots get fired when Matt is anywhere towards the front door from the door that has a hole in it, right? Because you can't make a bullet go in a circle. He's there, no shots are fired until that shot at least, because he can't make that hole from an angle closer to the front door. That's where Kevin is under the evidence, let alone the real possibility. And the hallway entrance there is where Matt is, and he's shot. And now we also know from the forensics and the evidence at the scene, in the front, they are facing each other. Kevin shoots, they are facing each other. He has been whipped up to believe, by reference to guns, by reference to violence, by reference to agitation, the atmosphere of fear that Kate admits she built is face-to-face with the person. And it's a real possibility more things were built into this by Tracy to make sure it happened. We got a pile of text messages. Let's prosecute a case on paper because we don't have the proof of the crime scene. We can't prove this by the crime scene. We can't, of course, disprove self-defense by the crime scene. We can't do it with DNA. We can't do it with injuries to Matt. They can certainly make out a conspiracy once they put everything together, get enough proof that Kate gets a deal. We're also just filling in the details. And all that evidence doesn't really have Kevin in it. There's a few cherry-picked things that they could find of information, and that's information that looks like it's fed to Kevin to continue to wrap him in to the atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. And look, just pick those out and put them practically on a board with red yarn. Yeah, I mean, yeah. A good lawyer can do that. Maybe an investigation would leave real possibilities out of the box. I mean, we didn't need Chris Bertram for all of us to understand is just normal common sense citizens, which you should use. Common sense. That's why, that's an integral and a critically important part of a jury system, right? Take your experiences that you all have, and you're all different, purposefully, so that you can have more experiences that are different, that you use to consider real possibilities. Real possibilities that even if they make you feel uncomfortable, I have to admit they're real possibilities because of the evidence or lack of evidence. You want to know whether you can tie Kevin in. You can't do it with the scene for what applies here, so can't do it with the timeline. There's plenty of time, whether you by the state's timeline, as strict as they want it to be, from the evidence, you can look at it. There's, as Detective Nordine admitted, even after investigation of the timeline, I think the evidence was it could be 30 to 60 seconds different from even Kruger's security camera. So you could go do witness interviews. You want to know what Tara Lynn means by a text? How Tara Lynn was made to feel? What Tara Lynn's heard and said on telephone calls? You don't know anything from a call log. You can pick it and compare it to some text and conjecture. Hey, she's calling right around the time the search was happening. She's calling around. The other thing you could do is ask her. They don't ever, ever try to talk to Tara Lynn. The person who picked Kate up from California, the person who was concerned enough that she thought there should be an air tag in there, the person who did all this discussion. Plus, she's the mover. You saw, she's the one they asked. She's like the ChatGPT. They asked her to do the text that we're going to get sent to Matt. Is it because it might not follow your theory that is so very simple that you've already reached and has already been charged? Go to the scene. Return to the scene. The scene didn't tell you anything on its face. Like you said, walk Tracy through it. She's out. Walk Kate through it some more. Sure, she says she's upstairs the whole time. Okay. Talk to her about that. Talk to her more. You got this evidence they want you to believe. Okay. I heard Kevin's voice say something about be careful, he may still be moving. And yet, you can see from the interviews and stuff, she then says in her letter to the court for sentencing, and then I heard the doorbell ring. Well, the prosecutors go back out there and talk to her in December because I thought you didn't hear the doorbell ring. I heard a commotion, she claims to the police. Up here now, she doesn't hear a commotion, but we're supposed to believe that little part because they're trying to put Kevin in that planting of the knife. Do surveillance. You got two people that you're learning are killers. 3.5 months you could look around. You could try to find out about their lives. Is there ever a time you've ever heard somebody keep a secret for 3.5 months? I'll tell you who can't. Kate, she talks about the case on Discord while she's smoking pot. Do surveillance. Try to get evidence. Be interesting. Find out if she ever told somebody, for instance, if I don't get caught and have to be asked about my brother to get a deal. I get it. Oh, review these new phones. Now you have phones where they have conversed from for 3.5 months. Kate too, and mom's work phone, I think it's called. I don't know if we even have any of that. The government didn't give you that information. Why? Because it's radio silent? I don't know, because I asked Detective Nordine, and he admitted he hadn't really looked at it very much. And the prosecutor made clear why he hasn't done these things. He's busy. I don't think that that matches up too well with those principles. I don't think I heard almost anything about Kate Restelli's testimony, interviews, or anything in Mr. Watabe's opening statement. There's a good reason for that. There's a good reason because they gave her this sweetheart deal. So long as she said what happened, and so long as they believed it. She got the deal. We don't have to be experts in logic to argue that that means the government's position is you should take it. First thing she ever says, it's an actual exhibit. I never discussed anything with Kevin, and my mom kept us apart. Tracy took advantage of Kevin's mental health issues. In the very last paragraph, 18, Kathryn never discussed the shootings with Tracy and Kevin. She wouldn't discuss the details with Kathryn. And that wasn't enough. She towed that same line. We went over it with her. She towed that same line in her interview, that after which she got her truth-telling deal. Didn't have a conversation with Kevin. He's in his room sleeping. He's not around when we made these preparations of the room. It's my mother's plan, me and my mom. Learned some other things, though, about Kevin, according to her, that they had talked about maybe him being a protector. Kevin offered to protect being a strong male versus a strong male. They had gotten him into a protector's role. When she said Matt was abusive, which we know was still another lie, or at least doesn't seem to be supported by the evidence, whatever he was, whether he made this family on nerve at times, he didn't do what Kate continues to say he did. At least there's no evidence. Beating her, even though she said it. Genuinely fearful for my life, she continued to maintain in her interviews. We got that out. And Kevin said, when he heard any of that, I'll protect you. They certainly built him into a protector. That is the evidence from Kate. That's the evidence from Kate that in relation to the state gave her a truth-telling deal. Then she wrote, you've got this. Everything again. I ran away from abuse. You don't think that she's presenting this to the family? Whether it's in a phone call, around the house, everything else, does she have to text it? Lays out a timeline that isn't convenient for the state. You've got that. That's what you have to believe. It's not just an alternative theory. It's not just a reasonable possibility, a real possibility from thin air. That's evidence. That's from evidence. That's from a sworn witness. We've got to do it for telling the truth. And she said it over and over. Over and over and over. I won't belabor it because that's what I just did. I warned you at the start of this trial that I am not a good PowerPointer. And I want to have a discussion with you, not work it off PowerPoint. Do you want to know for real from these people whether they, despite how they might talk in their text messages that you never went ask them about? What did you mean by this? Why'd you say LMAO? Doesn't seem to be a very funny subject. It has to do with just the way we gloss things. I don't know. Go find out what these text messages mean by the texters. Go find out about the family. Go find out about Kevin. Go find out about the mother. Unfortunately, you learned right here at this trial that these poor people didn't know what has now been proven, and they agree with it, is that Tracy lived a completely double life. That's how successfully manipulative she is. She's a sex worker, criminal record, doing things that she kept from her family, and then she was the mom's side. And when you have someone you could go interview, you could ask to testify like Rachel did. You ask her to put her hand up and swear an oath and get information from her. You don't ever go there and do those questions to her and present her the materials and try to understand them in a context she can give you. Do you think this is a person who's hiding something? A criminal? You wait till she's on the stand before a jury and you ambush her with them. Once you've done that, what do you think the likelihood that Carol Ann down there in the lower right of the grilling picture with Tim, Kevin, and Jacob, what do you think the likelihood that that person's ever going to take the risk of getting on a stand and telling her truth? It's a strategy to avoid getting evidence to the jury, not to get evidence to the jury. But she did testify. Carol did testify. Thankfully, before all that happened, before the government did that, they introduced text messages. And in those text messages includes Terrell Ann texting, "That day was not on the way." I meant to get him. I meant to read him a little bit. Lucky for you, I didn't. But you may recall we did it in the trial. And here's what Terrell Ann's testimony was. I'm worried. I want peace. Tracy had called out the peacemaker. I don't know if he'll be mad, so mad and stewing on the drive that it will be bad. But I pray that it won't. I pray it won't be bad. She is live streaming practically in these text messages the government gave me, her testimony about how she hopes there will be peace, and she's terrified that there won't be because she just doesn't know how Matt's going to show up. That's representative of the family's circumstance, and Kevin's in the family. These aren't real possibilities from thin air. These are real possibilities from the evidence. As lacking as the investigation with all the tools you heard Mr. Bertram talk about that police have. As lacking as that is, we at least got that. We at least know that evidence. We didn't need to rely only on, the antipas too tough on Detective Mordine. Blame me. Don't hold it against the case of defending Kevin Ellis, to fill in more importantly, the principles that apply in this case. But we didn't need it, even for just to show confirmation bias. He shot, he's guilty. Oh, I found 2 peas in a conspiracy pod. Let's toss Kevin into that. He shot. It's very simple for according to a prosecutor. Yeah, you even hire an expert you don't even introduce to your case agent who gets on a stand, is caught flatly blowing it with regard to crime scene investigation, and thanks to the return of the follow-up questions from the prosecutor, we learned I still wouldn't have changed my mind. The mind is made up. I know what you hired me to say. He shot, therefore he conspired. The blood on the wall shows that it was staged. Or should an honest investigation be something you demand and it show respect for you as jurors? The whole system, and you're putting in this position. An honest investigation. Scorch the earth. Surveil. Do something as basic as interview. Talk to Tara Lynn. Talk more to Rachel, who has been willing to talk and testify. Talk to Tim. You heard Tim. Yeah, I was surprised. Nobody ever wanted to hear anything from me till a couple of weeks before when we put Tim on the witness list, and so they just popped in and stole him and put him on in their own case. That's what Tim told you. Week before is when they talked to Tim. Go back to Tracy. I mean, it's crazy. Can you imagine what the police could have done with Tracy Grist? With Kate in 3.5 months of them thinking they'd gotten away with it? I don't know. Are you afraid that that investigation may present real possibilities that you can't prove what the rules and the constitutional principles require you to prove? I hope not. There'll be a real possibility that Kevin didn't know, that he confronted in those circumstances that he did have a reason, because he had been put there, according to the evidence, as a protector. Who's Kevin? Protector. I mean, they don't know or care after that. You don't go talk to anybody about Kevin. They don't learn about it. But we do know a happenstance that his whole life is built around billiards. He's going to the Nationals in 2 weeks or so. But he goes to sushi and agrees to be a murderer, right? Let me get this murder stuff out of the way. It doesn't make any sense at all. The more you investigate and learn about Kevin, it's going to make less sense. So just don't. I'll protect you. That's in evidence. That's my role. That's in evidence. I basically otherwise play pool and I get takeout with my mom. Go through the text if you want. I love and trust my family. That's tragic. So did his sisters. And look what was it Rachel said, we're processing this the best we can. This is his contact in their phone. If you see it, the contact in their phones is Kevin from heaven. Tracy was right. So was Kate. Kevin is easy to manipulate. Sad. You can make him feel bad about himself. You can use that as is described by Kate. Make him do something to set him up to do it. Is that a real possibility? Of course it is. That's the evidence. Who's Tracy? Double life. Mastermind. Lies to everyone, including her family. She controls the narrative. Hey, don't say, hey, go lawyer, go talk to Kevin. Kevin, don't say anything. I'll talk to the police. I'll talk to Diane. You heard Diane talk about that. Tracy's whispering in Kate's ear, even when they're talking to poor Diane. He's the architect. State agrees with that now. Who's Kate Restelli? Pothead, hedonist, liar, drama queen on Discord. Apparently convincing enough to get guys there to puff up and say they'll go take care of Matt. But still, they make her their star witness. She got a deal. And then even then, I don't know, somewhere deep inside, because of family, when pressed and pressed and pressed on all of her statements, she couldn't get to the lie that Kevin knew. As a lawyer, I'm gonna think later what I missed. I'm gonna get told probably by some colleagues. It's not about me, it's not about this, it's an argument. But, oh, that's right, I did have these notes. I wanted to just stop there because you paid close attention. You knew your job was to look for any real possibility that the state hasn't met these incredible burdens. That there are alternatives, including imperfect self-defense, if that's what you as deliberators come to. One thing I've added to this slide is extraordinarily important because it dovetails with all of these principles and with the notion of peers. Peers on this jury, you're going to talk, you're going to use your common sense, you're going to deliberate, you're going to do a great job. You might not agree. There's jury instruction that says at the end of all, while you do all that, you need to hold on to your own personal convictions. You are still individuals in the jury room, and our system is based on the fact that 8 people have to agree entirely, all of them. That's an important principle. It's built in on purpose into our system. It's humane. Went through this trial and you know, there's the state's theory, and then they focus on pieces of evidence that would support it. They want to say are enough to fill the box, and then there's this evidence that doesn't make sense. There's this stuff that provides real possibilities that isn't exactly what happened, or at least we haven't investigated enough to know. And we don't need it, or a counter, or why didn't you talk to Terrell Lynn? Well, I don't know, what if it tipped her off sometime in the last 18 months? And excuses. And when I was a kid, there was this Aesop fable. And it was about, and it's lived a little bit in my legal career. And it is a wolf and a stag meet at a stream in the woods. And the wolf growls and says, "You are muddying the water I'm drinking." And the stag says, "I'm drinking downstream." And the wolf growls and says, "You're part of a plot to kill my father 2 years ago." And the stag says, "I'm 9 months old." And the wolf growls, says, "You are good at coming up with answers, but I'm going to eat you all the same." the state's asking you to do. You're going to hear now, again, from the state. That's how big a deal these are. It is so much, so important and such a burden. They get to go first and last. I would sell my house to get to be able to do that. But while they go second and last, I'm just going to ask you, in fairness, when you hear the points made by, I think it's going to be Mr. Pomeroy, think to yourself, what would Williams say? What would Ramos say? What would the defense say? What does the evidence say? What would it, if I got a chance to get back up here and talk again after the prosecutor, please just think of that, in fairness. I also want to say that throughout the trial, it's dynamic, and you're human beings, and you could have reactions, and you could have feelings about it, and you might have negative ones. And it might be about something someone did. It might be me, or it might be Alex. The positive won't be about Marissa. Hold those against us. If you have any, hold them against us. Or if you thought we made a mistake or did a bad job, hold that against us. Person who sat furthest away from you for 1.5 weeks. This human being, your peer, that's what these principles are here to protect. I've made my ask of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Pomeroy on the bottle.
Yes, Your Honor, we need this to connect.
All right, we'll call the state here while you connect.